you read the title or saw the thumbnail. This is Yuta versus 15-finger Sukuna. This is pretty highly debated still. Most people saying Sukuna just like no diffs, but I'm here to say why it's actually a lot closer than people think. Kind of. I'll get more into that later. Also, this video is gonna be split into 6 sections. End of series Yuta versus 15-finger Yujikuna, Meguna, and Meguna without shrine, and Goda versus those same variants, and Yujikuna versus Shibuya Yuta. First, I want to debunk Meguna blitzing Ryu. It's pretty obvious, but it was just fear hacks like the entire fight. The perfect example of this is when Tanjiro gets fear hacked by Gyutaro and gets blitzed, but later react and dodge him in the fight. So it's pretty obvious that Ryu was nerfed. So no, Sukuna isn't blitzing Yuta and no diffing him. To start, I'll cover the usual debate being Yuta versus Yujikuna. Now with first scale, Yuta. First off, he's obviously stronger than Maki. I'm not gonna go on a whole side tangent to prove Yuta over Maki physically, but come on now, we both know Yuta is stronger and faster, has more AP, pretty much everything except maybe durability. Maki is able to fight 16-finger Meguna. I know in all my past vids I've said 15, but I really meant 16 and I know it's 16, so just keep in mind if I accidentally say 15, I mean 16. Being relative to Meguna would make her weaker than Yujikuna and cheat form Sukuna. The reason for this is because the only difference between these versions is the vessel or body. This is kind of obvious on face value, but even Gojo supports his logic. To talk more about what Gojo is saying, he's saying that someone with even slightly more muscle mass will play a major factor in Jujutsu. And let's be real, the difference between the average big black man and Yuji or Sukuna is really big. So it should be a pretty noticeable difference between Meguna, Yujikuna, and cheat from Sukuna. Definitely not a blitz level, but it's definitely a good portion, maybe like an outpace level. And to be clear, this would not change curse technique output, so Sukuna's cleaves and dismantles are the same output no matter the body. Also, yes, the true from Sukuna that Yuji and Yuta fought was 16-finger level in strength. This is because Sukuna says he could one-shot Yuta and Yuji with cleave like he did to Ryu, and it's not because his output was low, it's simply because Yuta and Yuji were just that strong. Plus, Sukuna being relative to Yuta and Yuji, who scale to 60-finger levels of Sukuna power, being proven with Maki. So Yuta would have the physicals to fight Yujikuna and not just get blitzed. Because of his durability, he has the physicals and he has the hacks with stuff like clairvoyance, and he also has his domain skill with his small domain. But there's one thing he lacks that's going to become a running theme in this video, and that's durability. Because we see Meguna one-shot Ryu with cleave, and Sukuna says he can do that to Yuji and Yuta. So since Yuta and Yujikuna are relative, all Yujikuna needs to do to win is land one cleave, and dismantles are pretty good at doing pretty lethal damage. So cleave and dismantles are honestly way too versatile. But in domain clash, if Yuta can get clairvoyance, I don't see him getting hit by Sukuna's cleave with a minute of precog. Yuta also has pretty good AP with an icebreaker, and of course Rika for added pressure in a 2v1. I could honestly see a case for Yuta winning the domain clash and putting further pressure onto Sukuna. Since this is Yujikuna, he doesn't have 4 arms and there's no simple domain, so he would have to use Hollow Worker Basket and get rid of the use of his 2 arms. And if you were to let it go, and it breaks, then Yuta would just use Jacob's Ladder and GG's for Sukuna. So Sukuna would have to keep up Hollow Worker Basket while trying to fight Yuta and Rika. So I could honestly see a good case for Yuta winning, as long as he doesn't get hit by cleave or a bunch of dismantles. But it's really 50-50, because Yuta with all his copy abilities will be able to dodge cleave and dismantles, and if he gets hit by any of Sukuna, gets hit by Jacob's Ladder, Yuta wins. Sukuna just needs a couple dismantles or 1 cleave to win, and that's even if Yuta wins the domain clash. If he doesn't, he just loses. And after the domain, if Sukuna were to live somehow, Yuta would be in burnout while Sukuna wouldn't be. But I will say, Yuta's curse sneak burnout doesn't last long, like at all. It's barely a difference. But that is enough time for 1 cleave or 1 dismantle. So I honestly see Sukuna winning more times than not. Like barely, but it's honestly pretty close because Yuta's hacks. Of course Rika, but again, a couple dismantles or 1 cleave, and it's GG's. So I'd say it's like 60-40 in Sukuna's favor for Yuta versus Meguna. Now, surprisingly, Yuta should have the physical advantage here because he scales to Sukuna with a better body. But the same problem arises with Shrine being able to one-shot Yuta. I won't really get into further depth with Shrine because I covered it in Yujikuna. But Meguna does, of course, use Shrine still, so it's still a very good win con for Sukuna. I could actually see a case for you to win this more times than not, a stat advantage he has alongside Rika. But again, it's one cleave. All he has to do is grab him, and it's just GG's for Yuta. Plus, Big Raga, the Yop Stappa, and Agito, which Meguna could summon, and the Deer, which would likely get rid of Rika. So Meguna should win if he uses Raga and Agito, making it a 3v1 and getting at least one cleave off or something else. And I don't see Yuta and Rika winning this, unfortunately, even if they win the domain clash. Plus, Maharaga could adapt to stuff like Thin Icebreaker, allowing Meguna space to get stuff like cleave, and it's just GG's. Now, if we get rid of Shrine for Meguna, I see this being a lot closer. Outside of domain clash, Yuta has a stat advantage, as I already said, to maybe an outpace level, so Meguna would be getting washed outside the domain until he summons Raga and Agito. When he summons those two, it will change to a 3v2 obviously. I will go into more depth about this 3v2 because it's actually pretty interesting, mainly because you take away Sukuna's main win con in Shrine. Because without Shrine, Sukuna's fast and quick winning con is just gone from the fight, and Yuta still has his winning con of Jacob's Ladder. Of course, there's also Pure Love Beam, which should do a pretty good amount of damage. Yuta has to charge that up, and I don't really see him landing that without Curse Speech into it. Also, Big Raga and Agito are blitzing Yuta. I have a whole video on Yuta versus Big Maharaga, so I'm not going to go too into depth about Yuta versus Maharaga, but just know Maharaga and Agito are on the same level as Yuta. But you could make an argument they're actually weaker because Sukuna doesn't have the curse energy as 20 Finger Sukuna. But I'll let you decide if Maharaga and Agito are weaker or not. This fight should kind of go like Gojo versus Meguna, or just add Rika to Gojo's side. I honestly see Yuta and Rika winning this 3v2 because they have short vision, and Yuta was confident in winning a 2v2 with a stronger Agito and Maharaga. So make them weaker, and add Meguna, who's, let's be honest, is just going to be holding up Hollow Wicker Basket. I could see Yuta winning, but there are some cheap things Sukuna could do, like summon Round Deer to get rid of Rika. If this happens, it's just GG's for Yuta. Or set up the Ox, or even use the Tiger. If they were to the main clash, of course, Sukuna wouldn't have Malevolent Shrine here, so I'll just give him Meguna's domain, or we just give him no domain. Doesn't matter, he's not winning that domain clash. So, once he loses a domain clash, or once they're inside the domain, this is where the fun begins. I say Sukuna, as I said earlier, just holding up Hollow Wicker Basket, because he knows if he lets it drop, he's dead, Maharaga's dead, or Agito's dead. They're all three just dead. I really see it just being a 2v2, like, again, the Meguna versus Gojo fight, with Yuta and Rika going for Meguna to make him drop Hollow Wicker Basket, and kill Raga and Agito, while Raga and Agito defend Meguna. I don't see Yuta killing Maharaga with like one shot or anything, same with Agito. Besides, maybe if you think something a little bit weaker than the full output Granite Blast is as strong as Gojo's Red or max output Blue. If you do, then the glaze, it's appreciated. If not, that's understandable. Then again, Pure Love Beam might not even hit, considering the time it takes, unless with Curse Speech, which again, might not be one-shotting Raga. I also, however, don't see Maharaga adapting to anything, because the swords Yuta get are random. So it should just restart the adaptation each time Yuta uses a new curse technique on Maharaga. So this is honestly really hard, because Meguna, to be fair, won't be doing much besides just holding the hand sides up. But if Yuta and Rika to get an opening or do something with curse speech like put your hands down or something like that, and then do Jacob's Ladder to kill them all, then they're screwed. And I could honestly see that happening before the domain collapses and Yuta is forced into burnout for a couple seconds, or Sukuna gains the advantage, but again, only for a couple seconds. And I could see Yuta just dodging until he gets his curse technique back, which again, won't take that long. Ultimately, I really don't know how this fight would play out, and it's 50-50 in my mind, because Sukuna is a really crafty fighter, and he could do some unique things with the 10 shadows, and Yuta has the stats and the hacks to win this, and he has more win cons here. So I'm just gonna give it to Yuta 70-40. Now, for Shibuya Yuta versus Yujikuna. This all derives from the one statement Yuji makes after he fights Yuta. Of course, as usual, I don't think Yuta is massively faster throughout the manga from Shinjuku to Sendai, or even Shibuya, so he has the stats to fight Sukuna. but he does not have the domain skill. This is because, at this point, Yuta only knows a basic domain expansion. He can't change his barrier like Gojo did to fight Sukuna's domain. So in a domain clash, Sukuna just wins and kills Yuta. Yuta's RCT is not as good as Gojo's. He's not gonna be able to heal while fighting Sukuna. So yeah, Yuta is just cooked here. And again, he's still getting one shot with cleave. Now for Goda versus the Sukunas. Yujikuna should win here because Goda doesn't have clean enough control in Gojo's body to win in a domain clash, if you're being honest. And once Yujikuna wins the domain clash, I just don't see Goda winning. Plus, his purple does like no damage. So same with his red and the blue. So he's just not winning this. Same goes for Meguna. And Meguna without Shrine is a bit closer, but once Mahoraga adapts to Yuta, Yuta just doesn't have the adaptability Gojo does in a fight. So I don't see him doing anything crazy like a purple explosion here. And again, his regular purple did like no damage. So yeah, Meguna is taking it and Goda dies. So hopefully this video helped show why Yuta versus 15-finger Sukuna is actually a lot closer than you think. Yuta's the GOAT, Sukuna's the GOAT. But Sukuna is also closer than everyone else in the verse, and same with Gojo. Cleave is honestly broken, and if you're being real, you never actually saw Sukuna use his full techniques to his full capabilities in a fight. He's always one-shotting someone with Cleave or Dismantle. You never saw Sukuna use Shrine to his full capabilities in a fight with someone he's not one-shotting, or it just won't work on them. Only time we really saw this was in the raid, but then again, Sukuna was losing output fast, so it wasn't really doing that much damage anyway. Besides that, Pharaoh never needs to use it in a versatile way because he's one-shotting people like Jogo and Ryu, and just doesn't work once Mahoraga adapted in on Gojo. Yuta is the GOAT. He's top 3 confirmed. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, sub, peace.